Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Freddy or Not, where my name is Freddy and I am ready to dive into today's topic, which is time travel, or more specifically to TMNT's resident time traveler, Renet Tilley. Now, Renet is a staple throughout many different TMNT iterations, always popping up to whisk them away on some often unwanted time travel adventure.
And no, this is not cool at all!
Now, as a time traveler, her story is pretty complex. One time she can appear looking like her usual self, the next much older, and it's very frequent for her to talk about events only to realize that the turtles haven't experienced those events yet, often having to point out that at times her past is their future, and vice versa.
Time travel makes my head hurt.
This is further complicated when we found out that Renet has met numerous versions of the turtles from other dimensions, heavily implying that every version of Renet we have ever seen was actually all one and the same. So like and subscribe, because with that interpretation in mind, today I'm going to do my best to present the chronological order of all her appearances. Starting off, the TMNT RPG guide, Transdimensional Turtles, states Renet's parents are from the 79th dimension of null time, so it is likely that she was born there. Moving on to the chronological earliest appearance of her would have to be Tales of the TMNT 71, The Paradox of Chudnovsky. In this story, Renet and the Turtles fight Savanti Romero. Here, we also find out that Renet and Savanti Romero used to date before graduating, and at the end of the issue, during the fight, she reverts him back into a baby. But at the same time, Romero hits her with a spell that has the effect of reverting her intelligence back to when she was still a novice in time travel, which in turn caused her to once again develop her iconic Valley Girl manner of speaking, and sending her back to the university. From here we get to Renet's first appearance in TMNT 8, in which the Mirage Turtles meet her for the first time. It's also established in this one that she is Lord Simultaneous's apprentice timstress. At this point we likely get the 2003 version of Renet. Here she's very immature.
All I did was accidentally reverse the evolution on a planet of gross giant worms, and I get 6 weeks dusting duty. This is so completely harsh.
And in her first appearance, she says Savanti looks familiar, which would track with her briefly encountering him in issue 8.
Hey, do I know you? You look kind of familiar.
It's also important to note that in the 2003 show, she's also established as an apprentice timstress.
Being an apprentice timstress in the 79th level of null time can kinda get boring.
Next, I would probably say Tales 51, since Renet is still very impulsive in this one. Now, Renet does look pretty different here, but it is established that she stole a time scepter and stole an outfit to go with it. I would also guess that maybe she lost her old time scepter, and that's how the events of TMNT 3 Turtles in Time came to be, but that is admittedly speculation. Although, in one of the issues of the Saturday morning comic in which she shows up, the cover is a parody of the Turtles in Time poster, so maybe that was them trying to imply that that really was Renet's scepter. Who knows? Around this time is when I would guess the 2012 show version of Renet makes her appearance. Because in that one she still talks like the Renets before her, and she is still an apprentice, but she seems far more competent than the previous versions.
Nope. My name's Renet. I'm a time master. Okay. Assistant time master in training.
Especially in the 4-part fight against the monsters throughout time.
Enjoy your stay, Savanti. I'll check up on you in another 30 years or so.
The comic strip version of Renet is next up because she seems fairly familiar with time travel and doesn't seem as flighty as usual. This in spite of the fact that everyone's acting like a brain-dead comedian on account of this being a comic strip. Next, I put the Renet from the Turtles of Grayskull. Now this series is still ongoing, but so far we've been presented with a Renet who is still an apprentice timstress, but appears significantly more competent at time travel, and has outright stated that she has already met different versions of the Turtles by this point. I also speculate that it's around this time she gives the Turtles the time cube from TMNT 33, since she should likely have access to greater technology by this point. Next in line, I put the young version of Renet from Bebop and Rocksteady Destroy Everything. This version of Renet meets the IDW Turtles and comments on having already met different versions of them. On top of that, she doesn't speak with as much slang as she used to. She's not hitting them with the totally, you know what I mean? She also seems to know a lot more about time travel than previous versions of Renet, and she has a new costume. She also clarifies to the Turtles in this one that the Renet they met in Annual 14 and Turtles in Time was a future version of her, since she doesn't remember those events. Now, this of course leads us to Annual 14, a story in which Renet appears with a new costume while mentioning that she's actually a third-year apprentice by this point. Which either means that all this took place in 3 years, or time moves differently for Time Lords. I'm putting my money on the second option, since Renet has stated time moves differently for them, and at one point seemed to imply that they can live beyond 600 years of age. Moving on, I put Turtles in Time after Annual 14, since it features Renet with the same costume, and should therefore take place around the same time. Now we arrive at the classic issue, Tales of the TMNT Volume 1, Issue 7. Because in this one, Renet talks about how she's preparing for her final exam to graduate from an apprentice to a temporal infraction explicator 1st grade. And I should note that during this issue, her and the Turtles do spend 3 months stranded in the past, and the issues Spinal Tapped, Meanwhile 1 Million BC, and Sweat Sweet Sweet Renet take place during this time. Moving on, we get to the ever iconic and oh so depressing Tales 69, in which Renet tries to warn Raphael about Shadow's future, leading to Lord Simultaneous later telling Renet that this is why you shouldn't warn people about their future. This is also the earliest point the story can take place, since they mention fighting dinos, which of course happened in Tales Volume 1, Issue 7. Building off this, I next put the epilogue, in which Renet witnesses Donatello's death before time traveling back to happier times. I put this right after because it seems this version of Renet has learned her lesson about warning the Turtles about their future, and seems to have found better coping mechanisms. From here, we get to arguably the most important piece of the puzzle, the next mutation. I know, surprising, right? But you see, after the show ended, the series continued in the forms of letters that the Turtles would write. And in the letters from 1998, Donatello talks about an adventure he and Renet had fighting the Triceratons. But on March 1999, he tells a super long story that ends with a major status quo change of Lord Simultaneous ascending to a higher position to fight the Dark Lady Thuristria. Leaving Renet to succeed him as Time Lord. Also in this story, Savanti Romero meets what appears to be his final death. I know, right? Like, all this in the next mutation? Continuing forward, we arrive at the Saturday Morning Comics, issues 10, 9, then 11 in that order. In this one, Renet claims to be a time mistress, yet there is no mention of her being an apprentice, so I estimate this takes place sometime after she ascends to the position of Time Lord. The video game Mutant Madness also probably takes place around this time, since she looks the same. I don't know, this one was a little hard to place on account of Renet having no lines. Moving on, we have TMNT 46 and 47. In this one, Renet looks much older and refers to herself as a timstress. She's also way more powerful in this one, and by the end banishes Savanti Romero in a way only Lord Simultaneous has done before. I should also mention that it's likely around this point that we get Renet from the opening of Tales 69, in which she has the same costume. Now, we get to her IDW appearances, in issues 113, 114, 146, and 147. Here we find an older version of Renet who now has an apprentice of her own, the mutant turtle named Lita. It's also probably around this time that the TMNT's 40th anniversary issue happens, in which it's mentioned that Renet helped teach the Mikey from Rise how to better control his time traveling abilities. I put this here because it tracks that at this point she would probably be accustomed to teaching. Now we get to Volume 4, issues 11, 14, and 22, because these issues feature an older looking and much more serious Renet who helps April out with a pretty advanced display of powers, literally taking them back in time and turning them into cockroaches. And speaking of older looking Renets with advanced powers, TMNT 42 features an adult Renet who single-handedly saves the day against Juliet Romero, Savanti Romero's wife. And finally, we reach the future version of Renet shown in Bebop and Rocksteady Destroy Everything, a version of Renet that is estimated to be around 600 years old, mind you. And there we have it, folks, Renet's timeline all the way from an apprentice timstress to a powerful and seasoned Time Lord in her own right. Well, folks, that's all I got for you today. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.